there's no way around the simple arithmetic that if there's no funding to provide weapons to Ukraine, we're just not in a position to continue to provide weapons to Ukraine. We've asked for that funding. We've received that funding in multiple rounds since the war began in February of 2022, and we have put it to quite remarkable use, saving Kyiv, saving Kherson, winning back, or saving Kharkiv, winning back Kherson, allowing Ukraine, enabling Ukraine to retake 50% of the territory that was taken, and saving that entire country from being dominated by Russia. So at this point, it's a pretty simple choice. The Congress has got to step up and provide the funding, because in the absence of that, as Director Young put it, there's not a magical pot of money out there that we can go dip.
This is my video update on this Tuesday, midday, December the 5th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the money situation for Project Ukraine, or the lack of money for Project Ukraine. So yesterday, or 2 days ago, there was a document that was prepared by the White House's Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, by Shalanda Young. And this document was addressed to congressional leaders, and it claimed that money was running out for Project Ukraine, and that if Congress does not allocate money to Project Ukraine very, very soon, then Project Ukraine is pretty much finito. That was what the Office of Management and Budget sent out to U.S. members of Congress. U.S. out of money for Ukraine, according to the White House. Ending American military assistance would kneecap Kiev, a top budget official warned. So Shalanda Young from the OMB, from Biden's OMB office, said in this document, and I quote, "I want to be clear, without congressional action, by the end of the year, we will run out of resources to procure more weapons and equipment for Ukraine and to provide equipment from U.S. military stocks," she said. "There is no magical pot of funding available to meet this moment. We are out of money and nearly out of time. Cutting off the flow of U.S. weapons and equipment will kneecap Ukraine on the battlefield, not only putting at risk the gains Ukraine has made, but increasing the likelihood of Russian military victories." We are out of money. We are out of money. And if money isn't given to the Elensky regime very soon, then Congress is putting at risk the gains Ukraine has made. What gains are they talking about? What gains is the Biden White House talking about? The gains from the big super duper counteroffensive? Or perhaps they're referencing the great Kherson counteroffensive, the great Kharkiv counteroffensive. Or maybe they're talking about the siege of Kiev, the ghost of Kiev. Are those the gains that they're talking about? Sullivan was addressing the media yesterday, begging for money from Congress. So he's speaking to the media, and as he's speaking to the media, he's basically addressing the U.S. Congress to approve money for Project Ukraine, begging the U.S. Congress to approve money for Project Ukraine. And he said that if money isn't given to Project Ukraine, then Ukraine's military gains 50% of the territory that they have recaptured from Russia. Isn't that the narrative now that they're talking about? Ukraine has managed to capture 50% of the territory from Putin's SMO. Sullivan said that these gains could be at risk. That's what Jake Sullivan told the media as he was begging Congress to approve money for Project Ukraine. And Sullivan then told the media, as he's addressing Congress via the media, he said that if Congress, listen to this one, if Congress does not approve money for Ukraine soon, well then it's like a vote for Putin. It means that you're basically approving Putin's actions. you're a Putin puppet if you don't approve money for Project Ukraine. One last big payday for Project Ukraine. That's basically what this is all about. Let's just get one last big payday in for Project Ukraine. CNN's article says Ukraine's U.S. lifeline is hanging by a thinning thread, according to CNN. And the first paragraph from CNN says, Russian President Vladimir Putin's grim bet that America and the West will tire of his brutal war before he does is looking better by the day. I love the collective West's, like the journalists they're writing of these stories. Very colorful. It's not just Vladimir Putin's bet. It's a grim bet. And it's not a war. It's Putin's brutal war. And there you can see a picture of Biden and of Putin side by side. Bidenopolis, Greece's favorite son, takes on Vladimir Putin. The Putin. Bidenopolis facing off against the Putin. And if money isn't given to the little green man in Kiev, the Putin's bet is going to pay off. He's going to win. The Putin's going to win. The grim bet that he made. For as long as it takes, that is what the collective West has been telling the world. For as long as it takes, they will support Ukraine. But money's running out. Money is running out. Sullivan said, we're running out of money and we are nearly out of time. That is what Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, told reporters, according to CNN. The toughening of administration rhetoric suggested that any lawmaker who opposed funding was on the Russian leader's side. A vote against supporting Ukraine is a vote to improve Vladimir Putin's strategic position, Sullivan said. Sullivan in panic, begging Congress to approve one final big payday for Project Ukraine. One final $60 billion, $61 billion for Project Ukraine. Come on, Congress. Let's approve $61 billion for Project Ukraine. I imagine if Elensky doesn't get this money, he's going to be in big trouble, isn't he? He's going to be in very big trouble. I imagine a lot of members of Ukraine's parliament, a lot of military officials, a lot of Elensky's inner circle is waiting on this money. You know they're waiting on this one big final payday before they bolt. You know it. You know there's people like Podolyak or Yermak or these guys who are like, there's a villa in Italy that I've got my eye on, and I need this payday, Elensky. I need this $61 billion so I can purchase this one last villa before I exit, before I make my way out of make my way off of this sinking ship. Right? The former defense minister Reznikov, that guy got off easy. That guy was the lucky guy. He got fired or he resigned or whatever the story was, whatever story they cooked up, and he made his way to London, ambassador of Ukraine to London. And he got out. And he's he's living it up now in London. You know it. So there's going to be a vote for the $106 billion funding package that Biden is looking for. $61 billion to Ukraine, $10 10 or 15 billion to Taiwan and 15 billion to Israel, and like $2 or $3 for the border, for the southern border. And Schumer, he said that he's going to put this to a vote, I believe tomorrow, either tomorrow or the next day, the day after tomorrow. And they're not expecting this to be passed. Most likely, this 106 billion will not be passed right now. Eventually, this money, or a large part of this money, will be approved. But the Republicans, they're basically saying that if they don't get more money for the southern border, if they don't get some sort of deal for the southern border, then they're not going to pass this 106 billion package that Biden is requesting. Even Lindsey Graham the other day on CNN, he said that no money for Ukraine unless the southern border is dealt with. So instead of like $5 going to the southern border, the Republicans want $10 to go to the southern border, and then they'll approve 61 billion to Project Ukraine. Even Lindsey Graham is basically saying no money to Ukraine until we do something with the southern border. That says a lot when Lindsey Graham is putting up resistance for money to be allocated to his buddy Elensky. But they'll approve one final payday to Project Ukraine. They'll figure out something with the southern border. They'll come up with some sort of compromise, and they'll get money to Project Ukraine. Maybe it won't be 61 billion, maybe it'll be 50 billion or 40 billion, but they'll get something to Project Ukraine. They're not going to let this one payday, they're not going to miss this one payday. They're not going to let this one payday elude them. We're talking about the political class. We're talking about the oligarchs. We're talking about campaign donors. We're talking about big multinational companies that have invested in Ukraine on the promise, on the belief that Elensky was going to actually win. And so companies like BlackRock and Monsanto, they're invested in Ukraine. Military industrial complex companies are invested in Ukraine. So they're going to make sure that they're going to get their one big payday. And it's 61 billion from Biden, from the US, but it's also 300 billion in frozen assets. They're not going to let that money go, believe me. And it's 50 billion via the EU as well. Even the Financial Times is reporting that the 50 billion from the EU is in jeopardy of not being allocated to Elensky. EU budget dispute threatens 50 billion euro war lifeline for Ukraine. And the Europeans, for them, it's going to be easy, because whatever money they can't get to Project Ukraine, and if Project Ukraine falls apart, they're going to blame Orban. I mean, you look at the featured image on this Financial Times article, and it's Elensky and Orban, right? So they're going to blame Orban. They're going to say, oh, Elensky, he failed because Orban didn't approve all of the 50 billion. So they're going to put the blame on Orban. So that's going to be the EU's excuse for Project Ukraine falling apart. Blame it on Orban. They'll figure out a way to get 50 billion to Project Ukraine. They'll probably have to give Orban the money that they owe him, the money that they owe Hungary. They're going to have to release it eventually, and I imagine that'll be enough for Orban to approve something. But Orban knows that Project Ukraine is done. He knows that this conflict is absolutely lost, and investing money in Project Ukraine is just throwing money away. That's all it is. It's throwing money away. Well, not really throwing money away. It's giving money to the big companies and to political donors, and minting some more future multimillionaires and billionaires. We're going to get a lot of billionaires popping up over the next couple of years. Believe me, a lot of billionaires. And everyone's going to be saying, where did these guys come from? Where did this guy make his money? Project Ukraine. That's where he made his money. That's why he's buying Manchester United. Project Ukraine. So yeah, they're going to blame Orban. That's how the EU is going to spin it. And And Orban actually, he was actually going to meet Poroshenko. So I did a video a couple of days ago, and I said there's no way that Orban is going to meet with Poroshenko. Why would the leader of Hungary meet with someone so below him in rank? Why would he take a meeting with Poroshenko, who's just a member of the parliament for Ukraine? Well, it turns out I was wrong. It turns out I was wrong, and Orban was going to meet with Poroshenko. That's like the official readout, the official schedule for Orban's government. They had a meeting with Poroshenko penciled in. So Poroshenko was lying when he was stopped by the border guards, and he said that he wants to go to Poland in order to solve the trucker dispute, and then he wants to speak with American officials to secure money for Project Ukraine. Poroshenko was lying, and the Elensky regime was telling the truth when they put out an article saying that no, Poroshenko wants to leave Ukraine so he can meet with Orban. So I wonder why Orban, the leader of Hungary, would take a meeting with someone so below him. I think the readout from the Hungarian government said that Orban, he'll take a meeting with any official from Ukraine that is trying to find a solution, a ceasefire solution to the war. I think Orban wanted to meet with Poroshenko to just get a feel for the coup that's developing in Ukraine. I think that's why Orban wanted to meet with Poroshenko. I think Orban's very clever. He's very clever, and I think he was like, bring Poroshenko to me. Okay, I'll take a meeting with Poroshenko. He wants a meeting with me, I'll take a meeting with him, because I think he wants to get a sense for the chaos that is taking place in Ukraine. That's why I think he was going to take the meeting with Poroshenko. Because you have sides now, you have factions. Klitschko, Poroshenko, maybe some other oligarchs in Ukraine. They're siding with Zaluzhny. And then you have Zelensky and his team, Yermak, Podolyak, and these guys, and a lot of parliament members, people in his party, servant of the people or servant for the people. You have these two factions. And I wonder where Intel is, where Budanov is siding. Maybe Budanov is just going to let both of them fight it out, thinking that he'll be able to slide into the position of president of Ukraine. I don't know, but the divisions are there. I mean, they're clear, they're apparent, and everyone's talking about them. Everyone's talking about them. Even the Kiev Independent, even the media in Ukraine now, like the propaganda, state-sponsored, state-funded media in Ukraine is talking about the fight between Z and Z, between Elensky and Zaluzhny. It's pretty incredible that even the media in Ukraine is openly talking about this fight between these two factions for power. The Kiev Independent, they have an article with the title, Media, Elensky bypassing Zaluzhny in communication with some commanders. And here's what the Kiev Independent writes. Instead of directly communicating with Zaluzhny, the president maintains parallel communication lines with chiefs of some military branches, such as Ground Forces Commander Syrsky or Air Force Commander Oleschuk, sources told the news outlet. Zaluzhny allegedly receives information from his subordinates only at the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's headquarters meetings. There is an impression that Zelensky has divided the armed forces into two groups, the good one, commanded by Syrsky, and other favorites, and the bad one, subordinate to Zaluzhny, a person from Zaluzhny's inner circle told Ukrainsky Pravda. This greatly demotivates the commander-in-chief and, most importantly, prevents him from commanding the entire military. Unbelievable, isn't it? And Congress is actually debating about giving $61 billion to this S show, when you have Ukraine media, not TASS, not RT, not Russian-sponsored propaganda. When you have Ukrainska Pravda and the Kiev Independent talking about how Ukraine's military commander-in-chief has to get information about what's going on from people under him because Elensky is bypassing him and talking to people under Zaluzhny's command. It's incredible, man. And Elensky has created two different groups. Here's the good bucket and the bad bucket. The bad bucket is Zaluzhny. The good bucket is Syrsky. Because Elensky wants to fire Zaluzhny, and Syrsky is going to be the commander-in-chief, most likely, of the armed forces. It's just that Elensky can't figure out, how do I fire Zaluzhny? The rumor is that Austin, when he was in Kiev, told Elensky not to fire Zaluzhny. So you got to imagine that Elensky's like, how do I fire this guy when I have Austin from the Pentagon telling me not to fire him? And they want to give $61 billion to this. What a waste! What a waste of money! My God, what a waste of money! Money that could go to the American people could be used in so many better ways. My God, what a waste! What a tragedy! What a waste! $50 billion from the EU. What a waste of money. There has to be someone in Congress that is reading an article like this. There has to be a lot of people in Congress who are reading an article like this and are just saying, this is just an S show. Is this how wars are won? You have the president in an open fight with out in the open, in a fight with the commander of the armed forces. They're in a power struggle, and they think they're going to defeat Russia this way. Give me a break. Give me a break. And that takes us to the big article, the article of the day, maybe the article of the conflict, because it is the Washington Post and their article with the title "Miscalculations, Divisions, Marked Offensive Planning by U.S. Ukraine," written by the Washington Post staff. This is a big article. This is a big article, and this is the article that this is the article that puts an end to Project Ukraine. That's how I read this article. It puts an end to Project Ukraine. It's basically the DC establishment saying, get your $61 billion approved, get your final payday to Project Ukraine approved, but we're washing our hands of this debacle. It's over. It's over. This was a disaster. This was a catastrophe. Let's see how we spin this thing. The European Union, they can blame Orban. The DC deep state, the DC insiders, they'll figure out a way to put the blame on someone. It looks like they're going to put the blame on Ukraine. If you read this article, it's everyone blaming each other. So the Washington Post, they claim that they interviewed something like 30 officials in the Biden administration, in the EU, in Ukraine, and all of these officials, most of them anonymous, some of them actually revealed who they are, but all of these officials are basically saying that it's that guy's fault and it's that guy's fault, and that's the reason that this failed, and that's the reason that it's failed, and they're just blaming each other. The blame game has begun. The U.S. is blaming Elensky, they're blaming Zaluzhny, they're blaming Ukraine, and Ukraine, they're blaming the U.S., they're blaming the EU, they're blaming NATO. We didn't get enough weapons, we didn't get enough money, we didn't get enough support, and the U.S. is basically saying, we gave you guys everything. They say in the article that Ukraine asked for like 1,000 vehicles, and Ukraine got 1,500. So they got 500 more than what they were asking. And then Ukraine tells the Washington Post, yeah, we got 1,500 vehicles, but many of those vehicles were junk. They weren't working. So I mean, it's the blame game. It is the blame game. Let me read you some of what's going on here. Let's see here. It's unbelievable stuff. Keep in mind, they want to give another $61 billion to this S show, even though they see the whole thing is just crumbling and collapsing. But a final payday. One final big payday. And you know they see that 300 billion in frozen assets. It's like right here. It's like they can almost grab that 300 billion. You know, they're like, oh, I can almost get that 300 billion. They're not going to let that 300 billion go. There's no way they're going to let that 300 billion go. You know that BlackRock and Monsanto are like, Biden, you better get that 300 billion. We believed you when you told us that Elensky was going to win. That's what they're going to tell Biden. Think about it. Monsanto, BlackRock, Soros, and his what did he make? Some sort of secret deal to dump waste, to dump garbage in Ukraine, something like that. You know they're gonna sit down with Biden. They're gonna say, Joe, you promised us that Elensky's going to defeat the Putin. You promised us not only riches and business in Ukraine, but Russia would collapse. We would balkanize it, and then we would get all of their resources. That's what you promised us. You said that Russia was going to be easy to collapse. It would be an easy regime change. 10,000 sanctions, Putin would crumble. People in Russia would get out onto the streets. They would demand that their government falls. We would get Navalny out of prison, and Navalny would be the leader of Russia, and it would have been all good, and we would have been super duper uber wealthy for many decades to come. That's what you promised us. So now, Joe, you get that 300 billion. You get that 300 billion, they're telling Joe Biden. You know that's what they're telling him. You better get that 60 billion. The EU better approve that 50 billion, and you better get that 300 billion. That's what they're telling him. You know it. You know it. Anyway, let's get back to this Washington Post article. Let's see here, and I'm taking the summary from RT. They summarized this article really well. U.S. and British officials helped plan the Ukrainian spring-summer campaign and provided all the asked for vehicles, but Kiev decided to divide its forces in three directions, according to the Washington Post feature published on Monday. Over a dozen Post employees interviewed more than 30 senior officials from Ukraine, the U.S., and the EU, only a handful identified by name. The outlet's conclusion was that a counteroffensive born in optimism has failed to deliver its expected punch, generating friction and second-guessing between Washington and Kiev. A series of 8 tabletop war games at the U.S. base in Wiesbaden, Germany, reportedly developed a viable, detailed campaign plan for the attack. The Pentagon wanted the offensive to start mid-April and focus on cutting the land bridge to Crimea by driving to Melitopol. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, advised the Ukrainians to also send sabotage groups into the Russian rear, saying there should be no Russian who goes to sleep without wondering if they're going to get their throats slit in the middle of the night, according to one official. The NATO-armed 47th Brigade, so new that 70% of its members had no combat experience, was to lead the way. Washington and Kiev sharply disagreed at time over strategy, tactics, and timing, according to the Post. Instead of a focused assault towards Melitopol, the Ukrainian leadership insisted on attacking in the direction of Berdyansk and Bakhmut, Artyomovsk as well. Kiev initially demanded over 1,000 armored vehicles, but U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin deemed it near impossible. Eventually, they received 1,500. However, some vehicles were criticized as unfit for combat, with issues like missing tracks and inadequate maintenance blamed on Ukrainian troops. And the article goes on and on. The plan that they executed was entirely feasible with the force that they had on the timeline that we planned out, a senior U.S. military official told the Post. They got everything they were promised on time, a senior U.S. official said. Yep, Ukraine got everything they wanted. They messed up. They lost this war. What else does this article say? It says that Zaluzhny, as things were going bad, just 4 days into the counteroffensive, Zaluzhny tossed aside all of the plans and he wanted to switch to smaller scale infantry assaults. There was a meeting on June 15th at the NATO headquarters in Brussels. It was heavy with an air of frustration. Reznikov, before he was fired in September, informed Austin that over 50% of the U.S. supplied mine clearing equipment was already destroyed. And it just goes on and on. It just talks about the fighting and the frustration and the blame game. Interesting statement from Milley, according to the Post. He wanted to send sabotage groups into the Russian rear, according to Milley. And they had tabletop war games. They planned everything out on a tabletop war games. Pretty incredible, huh? How am I doing on time? All right, we're doing okay. Got about 10 minutes, let's say. 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, so they had everything meticulously planned out on war games, on board games, right? Can you imagine Elensky at those meetings? They have like this big table and they're planning everything out. And Elensky's like, I see movie with Tom Hanks about World War II. We do it like that. And Mark Milley was probably like, Mr. President, that was just a movie. We can't do it like that. And then Elensky's like, okay, I see movie about guy called John Rambo. We do offensive like that. Mr. President, that was just a movie. We don't have, John Rambo is not real. We don't have someone like that. Oh, okay. Well, how we do counteroffensive? I don't understand. How we do this if we have no Rambo and no Private Ryan? Everything was cinematic. Remember, everything was going to be like a movie. I remember reporting on this. So many videos that we did. Everything was going to be like a movie. The big counteroffensive. The Russian military would be seeing the Ukraine military advancing. And what was the narrative? That the Russian military was so incompetent, so afraid that they would run away. Run away, run away. like Monty Python, the Holy Grail, right? Run away, run away. That's what they thought. That's what they thought. And even in this Washington Post article, they admit that the U.S., they completely misjudged Russia and the Russian military. They had no idea how the Russian military actually operates, the strength of the Russian military. They bought into their propaganda. They actually bought in and internalized their propaganda. That's what they believed. That was the plan. That was the big plan, was the Ukraine military advancing and the Russians retreating, running away, because they bought into the narrative of the Kherson and Kharkov, right? They actually believed. They believed that Ukraine actually defeated Russia in Kherson and Kharkiv. And we reported that the whole thing was fiction. We reported it's all fiction. Not only was it all fiction, it was really the Russians trapping the Ukraine military, moving to better defensive lines and just waiting for the Ukraine military to advance, and then, raining artillery down on them. Something like 20,000 Ukraine military was annihilated in Kherson and in Kharkiv. Yeah, I've said the story 1,000 times. I don't think I even need to get into it anymore. They believed in all the propaganda. I bet you there are people in the U.S. government who actually believe that the ghost of Kiev exists. Adam Kinzinger. I bet you he believes that the ghost of Kiev exists. All right. So look, check out the Washington Post article. Read it. It's a whole lot of coping and a whole lot of blaming. A whole lot of blaming. Knives out. Knives are out now. But at the end of the day, the conclusion is that Ukraine lost. This is the Washington Post's way of saying it's over. And they're preparing the American people to understand that it's over. Blame America, blame Elensky. Ukraine, blame America. Blame NATO. That's it. But before we wrap this thing up, before this thing completely wraps up, Project Ukraine, let's get one final payday in there, you know, before we walk away and leave this thing. At least let's make one last big push for money. That's it. That is it. So let's do a clown world. Should we do a couple of clown worlds? Yeah, we could do a couple of clown worlds here. So the first clown world is from Business Insider with the title, Ukrainian soldiers admit some of the Marines trying to defend a key river against Russian attack can't even swim. We're talking about Kherson and crossing over the river. I talked about this in my video a couple of days ago. And, you know, I joke around and I say that, you know, the Ukraine military, they're crossing the river in rubber ducky rafts. And I wasn't so far off, actually, as I'm joking around, because a soldier told Business Insider that the people that are being asked to cross the river, they can't swim, man. Can't swim. Several brigades were supposed to be posted here, not individual companies. We just don't have enough men, said the soldier. There are a lot of young guys among us. We need people, but trained people, not the green ones we have there now. There are guys who had spent just 3 weeks in training and only managed to shoot a few times, the soldier said. Everyone who wanted to volunteer for the war came a long time ago. It's too hard now to tempt people with money. Well, where did those soldiers disappear to, the ones that actually wanted to volunteer for the war? What happened to them? We know what happened to them anyway. He goes on to say, now we're getting those who didn't manage to escape the draft. You'll laugh at this, but some of our Marines can't even swim, the soldier added. Some of our Marines can't even swim. And this is the group, these are the soldiers that just 2 days ago, the New York Times was saying are going to threaten Crimea by crossing this river. That's what the New York Times reported 2 days ago. These are the soldiers that are going to keep the counteroffensive alive and make it to Melitopol and Tokmak and eventually to the Sea of Azov. What Sea of Azov are these soldiers going to go to? What Crimea are they going to go to if they can't swim? Marines who can't swim. What a catastrophe Project Ukraine has been. It was a great investment, they told us, right? A great investment. Isn't that what Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and Bidenopolis was saying the other day? And Kirby and Blinken. It's a great investment. With just 3% of our defense budget, we destroy 50% of the Russian army. We destroy 50% of the Russian army with Marines that can't swim. All right, let's do a final clown world and we'll wrap this video up. This is a great clown world, everybody. Courtesy of Politico. They have a title, Europe's Most Rizz Politicians Ranked. Which of Europe's high flyers have the most charisma? Politico finds out. So, what is Rizz? I had no idea what this word Rizz meant. But, shall we walk down a bit? Let's walk down a bit. But according to Politico, Rizz was Oxford's Word of the Year for 2023, aka someone with style, charm, or attractiveness, or charisma, as the olds might say. So that's what the word Rizz means. And Politico, they decided to rank leaders in Europe to give them a Rizz ranking. How charismatic, how charming are the EU politicians? It's unbelievable, this article. It really is unbelievable. So Macron, he got a ranking of 4, according to Politico. Olaf Scholz's Rizz ranking from 1 to 10 was 2. And Politico says it's hard to find a politician with less Rizz than the German chancellor. So they don't find Olaf Scholz to be very charming or charismatic. It gets good. It gets really good. Elensky, he had a Rizz ranking of 9. His Rizz ranking is 9. Actually, Obama, according to Politico, Obama has a 10. A Rizz ranking of 10. 10 out of 10. That's how charming, charismatic Obama is. But Elensky's up there. He has a Rizz ranking of 9. All right, let me make my way down these very dangerous steps here. These are dangerous steps. Very narrow. Okay, so let's see what they say about the charm that is Elensky. Pithy catchphrases, inspirational speeches, impossible bravery, sweet dance moves, plus the internet stands a short king. Elensky was a celebrity before he became Ukraine's president, and it shows. Sweet dance moves. Are they referencing the high heels dance of Elensky? Is that what they're referencing? Anyway, he has a rating of 9, and Georgia Maloney has a ranking of 3. They said she started out really well, but she deteriorated. Maloney. Boris Johnson has a Rizz ranking of 7. Wow. Boris Johnson, the guy responsible for sabotaging a ceasefire that would have saved hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lives and would have preserved Ukraine. He's very charming, very charismatic, according to Politico. Oh boy. And we get to Putin. We get to Putin. And Putin, well, Putin's Rizz ranking, not so good. Not so good, as you can imagine. Putin's Rizz ranking is 0. That's Putin's charm and charisma, 0. He has no charm and no charisma, according to Politico. That's his Rizz ranking. Putin tomorrow goes to the United Arab Emirates. Then he goes to Saudi Arabia. Thursday, he has the leader of Iran in Moscow. But Putin's charm is 0 because he's isolated, right? He's an isolated authoritarian despot. Really isolated, huh? That Putin. If I told you 3 years ago, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, UAE, working together, meeting together, discussing cooperation, business, political, geopolitical. Would you have believed me? Nope. But it's Putin that has no charisma, and Elensky that has a charisma ranking of 9. They believe their propaganda. That's their problem. They believe their narratives, which are comical. That's why they lost, and that's why they're losing. And that's why the Putin is winning. All right. That's the video, everybody. I'm going to wrap it up here. Do you guys want to go inside? Let's go inside. I'm going to sign out. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rockfin, and Twitter X, and go to Duran Shop. 20% off. 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Let's go inside, and the news stops. So if you want to walk with me, walk with me. No more news.